Hello and welcome to today's Laker lesson, part of the Research into Action series with a focus on high-dosage tutoring. I'm Venessa Keesler. I'm an educational consultant working with the Grand Valley State University Charter Schools office to bring you these Research into Action lessons. The Research into Action series is focused on bringing you, busy practitioners, high-quality, evidence-based practices so you don't have to spend a lot of time looking at the research yourself. So thanks for being with us today. Before I dive into today's content, I wanted to just say a couple things about research because this is a very popular thing for people to throw around. I looked at the research, I looked at the evidence. Just remember that research varies in quality and not all research is equally good. So today, the research I bring you is research that is high quality. It's in peer-reviewed journals, it uses appropriate methods, things like that. Also remember that a lot of research only shows associations, how two things relate to each other, which is different than cause. If we do this, then this will happen. Especially in education research, it's okay that some of our research is about associations. Kids who do this are more likely to do that. Teachers who do this are more likely to do that. There's a lot of things we can't test with appropriate causal methods, but just remember that if it's not a causal study, if you didn't do an experiment basically or use methods to approximate it, you can't be totally sure that one thing causes another, that this tutoring program causes something to happen. But you can see that kids who participated were more likely to do different things. Again, much of today's research actually leverages causal studies that are set up to see if they can prove what causes what, but that's not always the case, and that's okay. Just know what kind of research you're looking at. And then the final thing, and I think this is so true for education research, research is science. It's always evolving. We learn more all the time about what's working and what's not, and our subjects evolve. Today's students are not the same as the students of 10 years ago, 20 years ago, certainly 30 years ago. So it's important to remember that new findings mean that science is happening. And you are really lucky as part of the Grand Valley Charter School Network. The Grand Valley Charter School office does research and makes it available to you. And you can find that research at the website here, gvsu.edu/CSO/research. Okay, so what are you going to learn today? We're going to look at some of the key principles of effective tutoring, and we're going to look at some of the evidence that supports the use of tutoring. And today we're leveraging a key resource, and if you've watched other Research into Actions, I often reference this resource. So the Annenberg Institute at Brown University has a whole initiative that's devoted to getting the best empirical evidence related to pandemic recovery and related to education in general. This particular brief comes out of their pandemic recovery series because tutoring became a really big focus of inquiry for researchers coming out of the pandemic. But obviously the findings can apply broader than just pandemic recovery. And they also have a number of centers that look at a number of things. So this is a great, if you're ever like, I kind of want to find some high quality research, but I don't have time to look around everywhere, go to the Annenberg Institute. They have practitioner focused briefs. And today we are using one called Accelerating Student Learning with High Dosage Tutoring. Start with the big question on everybody's mind. Is tutoring an effective strategy? Short answer is yes. It is an effective strategy to support and strengthen learning for many types of K-12 students. Tutoring increased achievement from between 3 to 15 additional months of learning in one study. And high dosage tutoring in particular has large positive effects on both math and reading achievement. It particularly helps increase achievement in low-income students. So in another large study, tutoring was found to be more effective than feedback and progress monitoring, cooperative learning, computer-based and assisted instruction, and mentoring. It was more effective than those things in terms of increasing student achievement. Some of you might be remembering the No Child Left Behind required tutoring, which was not a great attempt at tutoring. I think the research evidence shows that a lot of the ways that required tutoring was implemented didn't follow some of these design principles we're going to talk about. But in general, again, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Tutoring is, in fact, a good investment of time and money for you with your students. And then the rest of today, we're going to talk specifically about high dosage tutoring, which is the kind of tutoring that has the high impacts. So the definition of high dosage tutoring is more than 3 days a week or at least 50 hours over 36 weeks. High dosage tutoring has been found to be effective in both smaller programs, like fewer kids, and then in large-scale tutoring programs. Something that has been found outside of high dosage tutoring is that something that worked when it was just a few kids and teachers or tutors didn't always scale up, but high dosage tutoring has been able to scale to larger programs. It is not cheap. It can be expensive, but people have done return on investment studies, and what they found is that the large effects, when you say this is how much effect we got and this is how much we spent, and you break it down into a cost per student, that it's actually cost effective. So other programs might look cheaper, but if they don't get the same size of effects, then it's not, your return on investment is smaller. So in other words, and I put this in big red letters, spending money on tutoring is worth it. The research literature suggests spending money on tutoring is a good investment. Money, like time, is something where we often don't have enough of it in education, so you're always prioritizing. And prioritizing tutoring is a good prioritization of your resources. So here are the key characteristics and design principles of high dosage tutoring. Frequency and scheduling. The research suggests that 3 or more sessions a week is necessary. 30 to 60 minutes a day, sometimes shorter for elementary, depending. If kids aren't engaged, it's not great just to have them do seat time. You want it to last for at least 10 weeks. And there is this kind of, I alluded to some tutoring that doesn't work. Once a week tutoring has little evidence of effectiveness. So to use another cliche, there's a little bit of a go big or go home aspect to tutoring. If you can't do high dosage tutoring, it may not be a good use of your time and money. Another option for the frequency and scheduling is to do intensive academies. These are 1 to 2 weeks long. They're often offered during school breaks. In one study, it was like a 10 to 1 student to teacher ratio. That helps with the cost effectiveness. So these are maybe less expensive than tutoring over time, but they really need to be administered by skilled teachers and be targeted to students who have academic challenges, but who are able to attend regularly. So in other words, these aren't necessarily great interventions for students who have attendance issues or can't get to the intensive academy, or who are going to have significant behavioral challenges while they're there. The research suggests that during the school day tutoring has the largest learning gains. Again, there might be some challenges to implementing that, but I want you to know that's what high quality research studies show. That's where you get your largest learning gains. In terms of group size, obviously one-on-one tutoring is the most effective. I think we all probably could have guessed that even without a study, but it's also the most expensive. The literature seems to suggest that tutors can work with up to 3 to 4 students and still see the positive effects, but past that point, it becomes more like small group instruction and it takes on a different flavor. If you group students, that can help with the effectiveness of tutoring. So grouping them by some sort of common characteristics, English learners or certain ability level in a subject or certain performance level in a subject, that can help increase effectiveness. Personnel, who is going to do this tutoring? Teachers are the most consistently effective tutors, which again is not surprising because this is what they do for a living, but there are some other options. So there have been studies that have shown that AmeriCorps fellows have been able to get positive results, paraprofessionals who are trained, and then paid volunteers. So this is, in this study, there were employees of local businesses and college students on work-study programs who served as tutors. So they were getting paid by their work-study program or their business, but they were tutoring with the time. If you are going to use volunteers, it needs to include intensive training, structured materials, and a curriculum. Where to focus the tutoring? It is effective at all grade levels. However, the most research, the huge bulk of the research has been done around reading tutoring in really early grades and then math tutoring in the later grades. So there's more evidence about it because there's been more research done. So it's easy to be like, well, that's where I should focus it. It's not quite that. There is evidence that both places are effective, but also people have looked more frequently there to see what works. So there's not necessarily evidence to not focus at any grade or subject area, but the bulk of the evidence is on the earlier grades in reading, literacy, and the later grades in math. Measurement. What should you do in terms of measuring progress? It is really important for tutoring programs to collect implementation data throughout the program and look at it for continuous improvement. So I say this in other of these research into action, this whole collect data thing can become its own enterprise and you get so busy collecting the data, you're not doing the tutoring. So I wouldn't necessarily worry about collecting every piece of data in the world. But what do you need to know about the program? Attendance, how are kids doing on their in-class formative assessments? What what is the purpose of the tutoring program, and what are 1 to 3 measures you really want to keep an eye on over time throughout implementation for that continuous improvement. It's important also to I already mentioned this, but set those clear learning objectives and evaluate progress toward those objectives. Tutoring isn't going to change everything. So if you're doing math tutoring in 6th graders, then you want to see math scores increase in 6th graders. So look at the data, look at the outcomes that go with the tutoring, and even below increased math scores, in which domains, in which areas, with which types of skills. So be focused in your purpose, and then you'll be able to better evaluate if the tutoring is doing what you want it to. And remember to use those ongoing informal assessments, and then update the instructional plans. And tutors will need the time to review, and they'll need support to review that assessment data as well. So if you're collecting data, build time into the tutoring program to look at it. Relationships. It can feel like everything in education comes down to relationships, and at some level I think it does. But what the research says is that tutoring programs that match a student with a tutor and keep that relationship consistent may help strengthen the relationship and create a better learning environment. I have personally in my life ran a tutoring program, so I know there are challenges with this. Sometimes, tutors have to drop out, kids change, but the extent to which you can create those relationships and you build that in as a design feature in your program, that is a research-based strategy to think about. And unsurprisingly, positive tutor-student relationships, like positive teacher-student relationships, are correlated with better student outcomes. Curriculum. I think there's all kinds of tutoring programs out there, but what the research says is that the effective ones use high-quality instructional materials that are aligned with academic standards and the classroom curriculum. So tutoring should not be doing something else. It should be doing what is aligned with the standards and the work that's going on in the classroom, and should be high-quality materials. This, I think, is an interesting finding. So sometimes people think about tutoring as remediation. We're going to go back and spend time on what was done in previous grades, but the research actually suggests that's not as effective, and a better approach is just-in-time tutoring. So what skills are happening right now in the classroom that need to be strengthened, challenged, built upon, as opposed to saying, let's go back to we're working on 7th grade, let's go back to 6th grade and figure out what you don't know. When you get to the material that they need in 7th grade, and then you have to go back and figure out what to do that 7th grade skill, what they need, that's a more effective way to get that prior content and prior teaching to students. Again, research suggests this. Delivery mode. So almost all of the research has focused on in-person tutoring. So there's a lot of findings that are like, in-person tutoring is good. There's, unsurprisingly, a growing body of evidence that looks at virtual tutoring, virtual learning. Given where we've been the last few years, that is not surprising. It does help lower costs, and it could help provide stronger matches. If you have tutors who can be anywhere, theoretically, maybe you can find a better match between tutor and student. So early studies are showing that blended and online models are having positive results. I would say if you're thinking about doing this kind of approach, I would think about how much your school environment does blended or online learning, and then derive your tutoring from that, probably. And then where do you prioritize? So in the literature, there are 3 big ways to prioritize who gets the tutoring. One is needs-driven, so you target students who perform below a particular threshold. One is curriculum-driven, so you say, we are coming up to an important part in the curriculum. Everybody's going to need some help transitioning or learning this next thing, so there's going to be tutoring focused on this time in the curriculum, this new concept or whatever the thing is that's happening, or specifically school transition time. We're going to do tutoring coming into middle school. We're going to do tutoring, going from kindergarten to first, or whatever the time is. And then the third model is everybody gets it, universal tutoring. Everybody gets some tutoring. There's obviously a lot of considerations, the biggest one being cost and trade-offs. So providing tutoring to everybody is going to be more expensive. It's going to reduce stigma, though, and make tutoring a more positive impact for everybody. And it's, in an ideal world, yeah, every student could have some access to tutoring, because every student has somewhere to grow too, that they're probably not having adequate time during the classroom day to really engage with an adult around. But again, you need a lot of adults, you need a lot of money, you need a lot of time. If you do the needs-driven, being careful about framing and avoiding stigma is important. Framing it as opportunities, making it available in ways that seem positive, not punishment. But these are just some of the things to consider in your design. I just want to leave you at the end with all these considerations for tutoring. Remember, at the end of the day, the core academic program a school is offering students is still the most important. You can't tutor your way out of a bad core academic program. You still need to be sure that what they're getting from first bell to last bell is of high quality and focus energy there. And then if you do choose to pursue tutoring, if that aligns with your continuous improvement goals, if you think it'd be a good match for your students, make sure to kind of go all in on it, dedicate enough resources, time, and design to it. I think what's happened in the past is people have tried to stand up these little tutoring programs, let's just do some tutoring, and then they're like, oh, it didn't work, nobody got better, because it wasn't set up for it to succeed in the way it wasn't set up to meet its goals. So if you're going to tutor big. And that's a good segue into the last part. What are some practical considerations that you might want to consider if you're implementing tutoring? A colleague of mine uses this framework, so hold your horses. She always says this first, hold your horses. So hold your horses. Tutoring is great, it's evidence-based, but it might not be the right option for your school at this time. And if you've been in education for even a hot minute, you know that it is popular to hear a new evidence-based thing and run off and do it, and then decide it's not working and abandon it, and then run off and do something else. So hold your horses. This is an evidence-based strategy. It is a good idea. Is it a good idea for you? I don't know. So take some time as a leadership team, take some time with your teachers, and consider some questions. Do we have students who would benefit from high dosage tutoring who are not already receiving other interventions? You know, maybe you think, oh, Timmy really needs this high dosage tutoring, but Timmy's already getting 6 other things. Maybe high dosage tutoring is not going to be great for Timmy in this context. Are you in the midst of other reforms? Did you just start really putting in place your MTSS system? Did you just start a new professional development initiative around feedback? Did you just start something that people are trying to adapt to? And maybe you want to wait to implement tutoring. And then finally, are we committed? Are you committed to making it happen? What would commitment and buy-in look like from the administrators, from teachers, from ancillary staff, from parents, from your management organization? Everybody. What would that look like? And if people aren't ready to do it, or there's not buy-in, or it's going to be an uphill battle, then it's probably better to not try to launch a high dosage tutoring program if you don't have the pieces in place to have all the buy-in. I was just reviewing some data from Grand Valley teachers recently for a different project, and one of the things people would say is like, well, I just took this great professional education and I want to share it with my school leader, or a school leader saying, I took this great and I want to share it with my staff. And I was just reflecting on how important it is that there's so many perspectives coming at any problem from different angles, and getting together to say, do we all see this problem the same way and do we all see the solution the same way is really important. And then the next thing my colleague always says, she says, hold your horses, and then first things first. So first things first, make a plan. So you've held your horses, you've gotten together, you've said, yes, this is us, this is our path, this is what we're doing. So now you need a really good plan. And again, education loves to focus on making a plan. And I will say a high quality plan is only useful if you use it to then implement. There's too many high quality plans sitting on shelves that nobody looks at, but you still need a plan. So in your plan, go back through these design features. What's your program focus and why? What's the delivery method going to be? Can you do it in school, knowing that that has a lot of benefits in terms of academic achievement, but also logistics for families? Who's going to do it? Do you have teachers who would be interested as an additional job for pay? Do you have partnerships where volunteers could come from? And how would you prioritize? Would it be for all students? Would it be for some? Would it be based on curriculum or transitions? Really think about all the aspects of the program, get it all figured out. And then the final thing, check your resources. So I would say try not to assume out of the gate this is impossible. You know, I know saying this is expensive can sometimes be a place where you're like, we're done. We invest a lot of money in education and things that aren't working. So again, if you choose to invest in this and you really invest in it, chances are good, the research suggests that it will be effective for you. But you have to do it right. So try not to assume it's impossible. Think about leveraging any of the ESSER CARES funds, though some of those are still around for a while. Look at volunteers. Do you have people? I know in my own school district, there are so many people who are clamoring to volunteer that sometimes the school district is like, okay, please hold on a second. Like, we don't know what to do with you. And I know volunteers come with their own challenges. You'd have to train them and supervise them, but you might have a really good volunteer opportunity. And again, it doesn't have to be teachers for tutoring to be effective. If you're thinking about doing it during in-school time and you're worried about pupil accounting, give your pupil accounting manager a call. They would far rather help you now when you're designing and planning than later when you've tried something to help kids and you've not gotten all the pupil accounting rules right and now there's an audit or a problem. What's the cliche? A pound of prevention is worth an ounce of cure. That one applies here. Give them a call and say, we want to do in-school tutoring. How can we structure it with our teachers? What do we do about instructional time? Similarly, call the Grand Valley Charter School office and say, hey, we really want to do high dosage tutoring. Can you help us think through how we could set this up? And again, remember, it may be expensive, but the evidence is strong that it will be effective. So spend your money smartly and think about this as an option.